As we approach yet another Christmas season, I feel myself thinking more and more about the Christmas aesthetic. I find it interesting how, more so than pretty much any other holiday besides Halloween, the Christmas season has such a key visual identity that we think of when we hear the word Christmas. There's so many traditions and items and things that we look to and that we return to every year, all of which convey meaning on what the word Christmas really means. As an adult, Christmas represents the spirit of charity, togetherness, thankfulness, and all those good things. A lot of wholesome yet somewhat abstract feelings. But when you're a kid, Christmas is a lot simpler. It really boils down to playing in the snow with your friends over break, and waking up early on Christmas morning to get presents from your parents or Santa Claus. One of the biggest ways in which Christmas is visually conveyed for kids is through television specials. It's almost a tradition for any long-running or very beloved TV series to receive a one-time temporary adoption of Christmas, winter, or holiday aesthetics to create the Christmas special. Even if the stories that they convey are simple and repetitive, we return to them every year because they remind us of the things that we experience and the emotions that we feel at or around Christmas time.
What is this?
Happy holidays, Dwight.
On top of that, it's fun to see your favorite fictional characters in a Christmas setting.
I ought to be able to cut my own.
In light of that idea, I was going to do a comprehensive retrospective on all the different Christmas specials that I grew up watching as a kid, namely in animation. But upon watching them, I found a lot of them to be somewhat frivolous. That's not to say that they're bad by any means. They're actually really funny, both when I was a kid and now. But I use the word frivolous because I don't think that they leave any deeper meaning on me as an adult. Meaning they don't touch on the more mature sides of Christmas that I mentioned earlier. Now, I'm not holding that against them. I realize that Nickelodeon Christmas specials are aimed at a younger audience, so of course the themes that they convey are going to be ones that a younger audience can relate to. But I was pleasantly surprised last week when I discovered that one episode in particular struck a emotional chord with me, so much so that I threw out my script and started from scratch. The episode that I'm talking about is the now 20-year-old episode of the SpongeBob SquarePants show, Christmas Who. It's a pretty funny and well-written episode with classic SpongeBob gags, but the ending of the episode actually sheds a lot of light on how to do a Christmas special right, and how it works in the context of the SpongeBob series. So let's dive into it. This episode takes place at a time when the concept of Christmas is entirely unfamiliar to Bikini Bottom, even to SpongeBob. One day, he's told about the idea of Christmas from Sandy, who fills him in on the aesthetics of the holiday, which gets SpongeBob very excited. One idea that he takes away in particular is the concept of gift giving from Santa Claus. So what he does is find a cool way to send letters to Santa Claus from all the residents of Bikini Bottom, and make sure that everyone who wants something gets a chance to send a letter of their own. One thing that I really noticed is that in pretty much any other cartoon, an episode where the main character learns about the concept of gift giving and getting, and the concept that they could get any gift they want from a mythical being like Santa, well, that episode would pretty much just be them brainstorming and getting greedy about the things that they want. In fact, that's pretty much the entire plot of the Fairly OddParents Christmas Every Day special, where Timmy wishes for Santa Claus to come by every day and repeat Christmas like Groundhog's Day, simply because he enjoys receiving material items. But that doesn't work for SpongeBob's character. The entire character of SpongeBob is one who displays an enduring sense of positivity in pretty much every situation, and he has the ability to influence others around him to believe the same things that he does, even if they're somewhat childlike or naive. Plus, he's never driven by greed, materialism, or selfishness. An idea that we could define as having a strong sense of moral responsibility. So the first half of the episode, which revolves around SpongeBob taking an aspect of a holiday that he just learned about, that generally people use to get what they want for themselves, and instead work his hardest to give others a chance to be happy and believe in something new, well, that's entirely within character for SpongeBob. And it's a great example of a unique Christmas special, but also just a classic SpongeBob episode in general. But there's one roadblock here, and of course it's Squidward. In this episode, SpongeBob gets virtually everyone on board with strong conviction in the generosity of Santa Claus, except for Squidward.
I don't believe in Santa Claus!
Come on, Squidward! Don't be a party pooper!
And when you think about it, that's a little bit surprising. Like, you would think that Squidward would immediately be on board with the idea of getting a free item, no questions asked. Aside from Mr. Krabs, Squidward is generally the most selfish person in the show. Squidward is dissatisfied with his life, and it's proven that he's willing to make impulsive or irrational decisions in pretty much any episode, only if he thinks that it will give him an immediate benefit. Some amazing episodes are set up due to Squidward believing in something and then suffering the consequences, because he believed in it for a misguided, selfish reason. Like the opposite of SpongeBob, who instead gets generally rewarded for his generosity. So it's somewhat in character that Squidward would act this way in this episode. Yes, he's passing up the opportunity for an objective benefit, but he knows that rejecting that will invalidate SpongeBob's happiness and in turn his success over Squidward. He does this a lot in the series actually, because his character is juxtaposed as dissatisfied and cynical against SpongeBob's optimism. Something that he doesn't want to admit, but he's very, very envious of. Despite that, Squidward's bad attitude in this episode doesn't really faze SpongeBob. SpongeBob's optimism is something that always prevails. And the only reason that SpongeBob became upset in the middle of this episode is not because of Squidward's constant torment and even ridicule, but it's because SpongeBob feels like he let everyone in the town down when Santa didn't show up, which again ties into SpongeBob's strong sense of moral responsibility that champions over any other want or desire in his life. So at this point, after even SpongeBob doesn't believe that Santa Claus is going to show up, Squidward is being as mean as he can get. He captures SpongeBob at his lowest moment. But in this moment, SpongeBob instead offers him a gift. He gives him a personalized clarinet, a detail that's going to be very important in a minute. But this gift changes Squidward's way of thinking from being mean to being nice almost instantaneously, because it was something handmade. It shows that despite the initial introduction of Christmas as something that could be easily about consumerism, it's instead about celebrating the spirit of thankfulness and brotherhood. And it's about showing people how much they mean to you in a very unconditional way. He realizes that SpongeBob wasn't trying so hard to realize something to feed his ego, the way Squidward might be motivated to do a task. He was instead trying to do something nice for the people that he cares about. In that moment, Squidward undergoes a rude awakening about his own morals. Maybe I'm overthinking this, but a Christmas episode where a character is more moved by themes of sentimentality and thankfulness instead of frivolous aesthetics or consumer greed, it's actually a really refreshing and moving take. And it's something that I only really picked up on as I grew older and understood more about the holiday of Christmas and the philosophy that goes into the creation of SpongeBob in general. But getting back to the end of the episode, Squidward here dresses up as Santa Claus to make it up to SpongeBob, and he figures the only gift that he can give him is renew his sense of faith that Santa Claus will in fact come. It's not a perfect transformation. He's still mean to SpongeBob sometimes, and he feels uncomfortable with being nice to him for an extended period of time.
All right, I'm Santa.
Santa!
But nevertheless, he does it because he feels like it's the right thing to do. I like this scene where SpongeBob is interacting with Squidward as Santa. It reinforces one of the greatest strengths of SpongeBob as a show. Steven Hillenburg often said that his goal was to make SpongeBob a protagonist that could be a kid and an adult at the same time. And it's displayed here better than pretty much anywhere else in the entire show. Despite SpongeBob reacting to Squidward in a childlike manner,
Where's your reindeer and your flying machine?
he's not at all concerned about the gifts that Santa has brought. Instead, he simply says to Squidward that the greatest gift is simply bringing Christmas to Bikini Bottom.
I didn't bring Christmas to Bikini Bottom, SpongeBob. You did.
For SpongeBob, realizing the deep sense of moral responsibility that he feels to his community is far greater than any one item. And that's a very adult want or need in life. After this, the episode ends with Squidward having to give away items in his house, so people believe that he is Santa Claus. This is something that he didn't have to do. He realizes that he'd rather trade all of his material possessions than admit that he isn't Santa Claus, which would probably upset SpongeBob. One of the nicest Squidward moments ever. After this, Squidward is rewarded from an actual letter from the real Santa Claus who thanks Squidward for the work that he did. And that's where the story wraps up. It's overall an amazing episode. It's representative of the classic SpongeBob story structure, where SpongeBob comes up with an idea, one that's naive or deviant from the average life he leads. And even if it causes some kind of damage along the way, his endless optimism can't help but influence the people around him, even Squidward sometimes. The point is, this story structure of SpongeBob influencing others in their outlook on life, is the hallmark of the SpongeBob canon. But in most examples that I can think of with Squidward doesn't ever really change because of SpongeBob. He's usually the foil, the one who can't be changed. Instead, Squidward only really changes again because he sees personal gain in it. In the case of the Idiot Box episode, it's him reaching personal enjoyment, but he's not willing to let SpongeBob and Patrick know about it. And in the case of the Dying for Pie episode, he's only nice to SpongeBob because he's easing his own conscience because he thinks SpongeBob is going to get blown up. But in Christmas Who, the level of meanness that Squidward was nothing compared to the way that he makes amends to SpongeBob. The episode could have totally ended with Squidward staying a jerk, but he underwent a unexpected but still very fitting development. In the end, this episode boils down to SpongeBob's optimism and the general Christmas cheer getting to Squidward to the point where he almost, not quite, but almost matches SpongeBob's level of moral responsibility. Meaning the idea that you do something nice for someone else, not because you have any kind of social or material gain to make from it, but simply because it's the right thing to do in the moment.
I gave away all my stuff just so SpongeBob wouldn't be sad.
This works extremely well with the general Christmas themes of joy, friendship, givingness, and hope. Something that I love every year, but I think this year more than ever we could use more of. For that reason, this episode is always going to be a classic to me. Anyway, I hope this exhaustive look at one of my favorite Christmas episodes was worth the deep dive. Thanks to everyone for a fantastic calendar year here on the channel. I'll be back in just 2 weeks to start the New Year's off strong for the channel. So I'll see you next time for more content.